Good afternoon from South Africa, and welcome to this IPMA Special Interest Group webinar. My name is Mark Kaywood. I'm the Global Head of the IPMA Special Interest Group that focuses in on project management officers. As I mentioned, I'm speaking to you from South Africa, in particular from Cape Town. This is where I live and work. Over the past almost 10 years, I've been working in our local government. It's been actually about 7 or 8 years, to be precise, where I've been part of the establishment of a PMO. I wasn't there when the first work was done, Jörg, but I'm still there. I think we're kind of at the place now where we feel our PMO is pretty well established, but I would say it was close to a 10-year journey to get to where we are from those early days of considering why we would want to even start with a PMO. So when we met a couple of months ago and you mentioned this piece of work on your minimum viable PMO, and you put out a time frame of 8 weeks, that obviously caught my attention. And I was intrigued by just, what would that even mean to talk of establishing a PMO in 8 weeks, considering my experience, which has been multiple years. And so, yeah, that was an intriguing concept, an intriguing idea. And then I was just really grateful when you mentioned your willingness to come and share some of your thoughts and learning. You mentioned the white paper that you've written. I know that's available in German. We're hoping that it'll come available in English in due course. And so here we are, about 2 months or so after our initial discussion. And thanks so much for making the time to be with us and to share the insights that you've gained in this particular niche area of study. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Jörg Klein as an experienced interim PMO leader. It's interesting, that term interim. I was intrigued by that. Maybe that's for another day. But also a strategic advisor who works on the intersection of project management and sustainability reporting and strategy. I see that clear overlap, and even the link between PMOs and sustainability, ESG, etc. Maybe also a great topic for another day. A nice overlap between two of our special interest groups. Jörg, we also have an ESG focus group. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Jörg has helped numerous organizations across Europe build agile PMO structures, embed sustainability in their core operations, and align project delivery with long-term strategic goals. His material insights into double materiality, modular PMO structures, and real-world implementation make him ideally placed to lead today's discussion. Before I hand over to Jörg, I know we chatted earlier today, and it was really delightful for me at a personal level to find out that you're also a lover of guitar, a guitar player as well. So I'm hoping one day that while we both share a love for PMOs and this world, I know for me it's fascinating. We also have that similar hobby of enjoying playing guitar. But before we jump into this, into the discussion, let me just give you a few housekeeping notes, and also let our attendees know how they can get more involved with the IPMA special interest groups. So firstly, on the special interest group or SIG side, we'd love you to register and join a special interest group. In order to do that, you need to log onto the IPMA. It's called sig.ipma.world. I'll put that in the chat. And then you go to the sign up icon and you follow the prompts. And what that then allows you to choose which special interest group you'd like to join. And the advantage of joining is that you can obviously be given updates on future webinars, but it also, if you would be interested in possibly speaking at a special interest group, or you want to be involved in research, etc., you can load all that in your sign up. And then that allows us to engage with you in a more meaningful way. So please do look at that, and please, if you please sign up. We'd love you to become part of this. In terms of questions, we're going to just manage those continually. Jörg said his preference is to just have questions and answers as he proceeds. So please, if you have a question or a comment that you would like to raise, please do so either in the chat, or there is also a Q&A button. So that's actually where you should put your questions in the Q&A. But if you pop it in the chat, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. So I will flag those and bring those to Jörg's attention. Okay, so that's all from me in terms of introductions and welcomes. So Jörg, over to you. Really looking forward to it. And thanks so much again for making time to speak with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me and for this very, very kind introduction, Mark. It's a very exciting topic. And before I jump to the next slide and tell you a bit more about who authored the paper, who is also part of that work, and what we're going to do today, I'd like to share with you how this came about. Like the idea of the minimum viable PMO came really out of these long PMO implementation timelines. And with all the rise of agility, I was wondering what's the fastest way to implement a minimalistic structure and show very, very early value to all of the stakeholders. And the MVPMO is an answer to that. So that's how this all came about originally. Besides, Mark mentioned already some things that we have in common. The love for PMOs and the guitar. I also practice judo and I love sports. My background, I'm not an economist. I was trained as a chemist, but after my PhD, I decided to go into project management and went through pretty much all the roles in project management, from operational project leader, project team member, sponsor, PMO lead, portfolio management. Everything around this was something that I tried over the years, and that got me increasingly interested in how do we shape the project world in organizations. And PMOs are obviously a very common and wonderful way of professionalizing project management and shaping the project world. And the white paper that is shown here in German, that has been published by two wonderful ladies who together with me lead the PMO expert group of the German Association for Project Management. So the German counterpart of Mark's SIG at the IPMA level. And I'm going to translate quickly what the subtitle is. The MVPMO, the fastest way to a PMO. And we originally had a question mark there because we wanted to spark a bit of discussion. And that is something I'm hoping to get today from you as well, that we can together talk and challenge a bit about the concept and take it one level further than we are already. And I've had a few of these sessions already in Germany, where webinars, presentations, where we went through this, and it's been all very, very enriching. And I'm hoping for a very active conversation later on. Whoever wants to download the paper, whether you're fluent in German or not, this is freely available on the website of the PMO expert group of the GPM, the German Association for Project Management. And you can just chug it into your favorite AI assistant and get a decent translation of the concept, I guess. So MVPMO. MVP sounds very agile. And yes, it is indeed. What an MVP is mostly, it's the first little block you see on that picture on the top. It's not the very big target that you have and you have to break it down bit by bit and plan it over the years. It's the smallest increment that is fully functional and can be delivered in the shortest period of time. So this is the agile concept behind this. And with this being agile also comes the advantage of being fully compatible with your organizational transformation. If you have an agile transformation, this would fully blend in and feed everything you want to show in practice during this transformation to your organization. So let's start with a thought in mind. This is not the fully fledged PMO that Mark is currently working in, that has evolved over almost a decade. But this is like the smallest starting point that is designed to provide the fastest, the smallest increment that functions on themselves and provide value for your stakeholders in the shortest possible amount of time. Now, how do we do this? To be communicable and to be easy to implement, it has to be simple. So we cut this down into 3 phases. Very simply put, you ask your stakeholders what is value to them. You do it. That's the service definition. And then you test it. And then you ask them again, after 8 weeks, how much value did you get out of this? Exactly. I saw someone wrote in the chat 2 sprints. It's very accurate. That's very close to what you're doing here. And you have to keep it simple because you have to communicate this to your stakeholders who typically are not project managers. They grew up in a line function and they have a very different lingo and understanding of what you're doing there. So it can't be too long and too complicated because you lose them on the way. And I remember a few years back, there was a very famous study, very, very highly cited, I think from the Australian PM Association, where they said most PMOs die simply because of the reason that their sponsors can't see the value. And that's why more than half of the PMOs die in the first 2 years. And we're catching this here. We're showing them we're not waiting 2 years. We're catching them after 8 weeks and starting to show value to stay alive and keep on being sponsored. So now I go through the details, what has to happen in each phase for this to work. Phase 1. The first question I'm asking my sponsor is, where am I located in the organization? Who do I report to? That's really simple. Very often it's the sponsor who hired me to do this. And then I'm asking a second question. So who next to you wants a PMO in this organization? Give me a max of 5 names. I'm scheduling meetings with them and I'm asking them, why do you want a PMO? What do you expect? And the conversation should at least get to some business pain points they have. They must have a reason why they say we want a PMO. Very often it's, yeah, the last 3 projects we did, they really sucked. They didn't deliver. It was a big headache, and I want all future projects to work more smoothly, whatever that means. So while I'm listening very closely to what my stakeholder is telling me, I'm starting to think what would be the simplest PMO service that catches his concern. I'm going to go through a few examples what that could be. And then I'm suggesting a PMO service and ask him, if I were to provide this service to you, would you perceive this as being valuable? Would this soothe your pain? And if they say yes, that's fine. If they say no, good as well. I'll move on to the next one. The deliverable I would like to walk out of these conversations is a list of 5 services prioritized from 1 to 5. So what I don't want to have is a wish list of a stakeholder where I don't know what's important and what's not, and that's very long. I'm going to say, like, okay, we've been talking 30 minutes about different things. These are 5 services that I could imagine would help you. Please sort them from 1 to 5 in order of their importance. And that's what I walk away with. If I do this with all my stakeholders, I should have a larger list that prioritizes all the possible services that I could deliver. And here comes a radical prioritization step. I'm going to cut out all of them except for 1 to maximum 3. And this is what I focus on, the ones that are on the top of the list. So first, massive de-scoping step in setting up the PMO. And for each one of these services that I've chosen, I'm going to define a standard operating procedure. And that is a 1-pager that contains a process diagram, like a chevron diagram, that easily, very simply shows the steps from request to what the PMO delivers. It's got to have a definition of done, another agile term, in order to have an answer, everybody knows when we're done with the service. Everybody agrees if this has been delivered, then it's done, finished. And we're going to complement this also with roles and responsibilities to make sure to have clear accountability of who does what. And that's all there is. Once I've defined this, and yes, this takes some experience, I'll get to the pitfalls later on, then I'm going to test all of this in phase 3. I'm going to pick one example from day-to-day operations where someone requests one of these services that I've chosen. I'm going to have a complete run through my standard operating procedure, and I'm going to pull everyone back together in a lessons learned, where we're going to go through how well did it work? How much value did we get out of this? And the final KPI that I want to get out of this, there is only one KPI that matters. Again, very simple. It's perceived value measured as net promoter score. For those who are not familiar with the net promoter score, you're asking your stakeholders, or you're asking any sort of person, how likely is it on a scale of 1 to 10 that you would recommend XY to someone else? So in our case, XY could be either a single service or it could be the PMO as general. That's up to your liking. I didn't restrain this in the concept yet. Now, that's all you do in 8 weeks. Now, sounds simple, but there are some things to pay attention to. The first thing would be, why is this so fast? And what are sort of the problems that you run into? Why some PMO implementations take a year? It's not that these people are doing anything wrong. Not at all. I want to make this clear from the very beginning. This is not an obviously better way of doing something better than everybody else did. No, it's just a different way of doing something very differently for different cases. This is optimized for being fast. And how do we get fast? We get fast if we throw out everything that is a lot of work to get moderate value. You're only taking low effort, high value items. You're separating structural implementation. There is a defined PMO and it's got a defined deliverable and service that it brings to the organization. And you're separating this from the cultural integration. So there are no roadshows in there. There are no large awareness campaigns. There are no sponsor trainings across the entire organization to bring everyone up to speed what a PMO actually is. It's all cut out because it takes very long. And we're focusing on the very simple things. This is the first descoping step. The second one would be, we're not building large pangalactic target descriptions of the PMO. We're taking few services. It's not 10 or 20 services, and it's not a large PMO handbook, but it's a max of 3 services, 1 SOP each, typically 1 page each. So it's few services. And now comes the probably most difficult piece in this. The services must be testable in 2 weeks. And that requires a few really, really tricky steps that I have not talked about yet. When you talk to your stakeholders, the first thing is you have to recognize when their expectations are somewhat too large to fit into the MVPMO concept, and you have to have the experience and knowledge to offer alternatives that scale this down. So if someone approaches me and says, I actually want a full project list with real-time update of the budgets and timelines, so build me an API to our ERP system to have all of this in real time, then this is way too large. This is a project of its own over several months to get this running. I have to be in the confident position to say, like, I understand what you mean, but this is too huge, too large to be a good starting point. Let me suggest first an intermediate step to get started with that has high value and fixes most of your pain points before we get to the really, really large services. So having these conversations and moderating the stakeholders' expectations to something that's small yet still high value, that's very, very difficult. And the second thing is, once you have these expectations, writing the SOP in a way that your service is defined in such a way that you can test it in 2 weeks, that's also something that requires a bit of skill. It's not trivial. It's very easy to lose the value point or to sacrifice the simplicity and the speed at this stage. So I think that's the biggest challenge in practice. And then the next one is there are no iterations. We run this through, and all the iteration loops, they might come afterwards. The fine-tuning is out of scope for any MVP, and so it is also for the MV PMO. So those are the four explanations, for major explanations for why is it so much faster and what is different than in other approaches, including what we're sacrificing here. We need to be aware that everything comes at a price. So does the speed. Now, I mentioned that the small services are quite likely the trickiest piece in this. So I want to give you a few examples of services that can be tested in 2 weeks while still delivering high value to your stakeholders in many, many cases. One of them is we have many organizations who don't even know how many projects are running in their organization and what they are. So a simple project list that is maintained provides oversight for the leadership of the organization and enables them to prioritize among these projects. That's already some value, and it provides an entry to strategically access your project world. And it's a simple list. What the PMO does is maintain a list, not more. This is something you can do and define in a 2 weeks time frame, and you can test it. Risk registers. It's another deliverable that's not too complicated. Like most, I would say all well-trained project managers can write a suitable risk register that is simple for their organization within a day. They know what's needed. It's not that complicated. And yes, then you have to perform risk analysis and fill this, but it's something that's absolutely feasible to provide this document and manage this for the organization in this short time frame. And in German law, you have also, as a capital, as a limited or SE or as a large organization, not necessarily large, but as an organization, you have the legal obligation to talk about your risks. And sometimes managing directors just guess from their gut feeling, but this gives them sort of a structured, auditable databases for reporting here and fulfilling a legal requirement. So you're also soothing the pain point. You're going to get your legal requirement fulfilled. I'm easing the pain point that you don't have to guess based on your gut feeling, but you have data. And all that's behind is a simple risk register. The next one would be a training. So I'm not talking here about a 4-level project manager certification that can go over years. Something very simple. Let's get everybody who leads a project in our organization on the same 1 to 2 hour basic course, so to make sure we've got a common understanding of how we want to manage timelines, budget, and risks. Nothing more, nothing less. Can be done in 1 hour, can be done in 2 hours. That is sort of the level of complexity and comprehensiveness that the MV PMO aims for. And as a PMO, I can design this course within a week. I can invite people, and then I have 2 weeks to test it, provide the lessons learned. It absolutely fits in the time frame. Last but not least, one of the reasons why organizations don't have an oversight of a project list and don't know which projects are going on is because the initiation point of the projects is not standardized. Everybody can start a project, no matter whether they have a charter or not. So the document of a project charter is a wonderful way of standardizing the implementation stage of projects and making sure we know what's a project and what is not. If it has a charter, it is. If it doesn't, it isn't. If it has a charter, it ends up in the project list. It's visible by management, and it will be prioritized, and it has access to resources. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And a charter, again, this is for the PMO, a rather simple exercise. It can be easily defined within a few hours to days, and it can be tested for newly launched projects within 2 weeks easily as well. So those are 4 examples how you may design the service you offer in such a simple way that you can push this through in such a short time frame and still deliver value to the people who want to see the PMO deliver value. Now, that's it for now. And I've actually missed one piece here in the slide, but I'm going to convey this to you verbally. It's every concept has its weaknesses. We made a SWOT analysis to understand where the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And we've talked a lot about the strengths of the concept. It's fast, it's low effort, it's low cost, it's very adaptable. The weaknesses, yes, it is very simplistic, and all the big things and big wishes naturally fall out of scope. The opportunities lie mostly in organizations that are not very mature with their project management practices. They would like to be more professional in the way they run their projects, but they don't know what a PMO really is, what it can do, and they shy away from the 6-digit investment budgets and a year until they figure out whether it works or not. For them, this is a much faster and cheaper, meaning an order of magnitude cheaper and faster way of getting an answer to this question. Is a PMO a good way of professionalizing our project management? And last but not least, one of the 2 major threats. One of them would be the established routes. They prevail. This is still the majority of consultancies. They offer large packages because also their business model is based on charging many consultant days. I'm a consultant. I think I can safely say this, that this is just naturally the normal business model, how this works. So they're somewhat less incentivized to offer such a thing like an MVPMO. And the second one, even bigger, and that's where I need all of your support. This is a concept paper. What I would like to see happen in the next 12 months is to make as many MVPMO implementations as possible so we can put empirical data behind the concept and say, like, okay, we're scheduling 8 weeks for this. On average, we're taking 6.8 weeks, with phase 2 being slightly shorter and and phase 3 being slightly longer than we originally anticipated. To get empirical data on what are the most requested small services to set up an MVPMO. And this empirical data would bring this concept to life and bring it to set it to the next level. But this is something that we're currently missing. There is no empirical proof for any of what I said. Obviously, this is not out of the blue, but based on the peer-reviewed literature, case studies, and more than a decade of what I've seen in organizations and my colleagues happening. But as a chemist and also every agilist among us will understand empirism rules. There's just very little that can go over the real data from the real world, and we need to generate this yet. Okay, with this, I'd like to join the conversation with you. Thank you for showing up today, and thank you for asking some more questions and getting a good conversation around this topic rolling. Whoever wants to stay in touch with me can scan the QR code and write to me, and we get, or call me if they happen to be in Germany or even from abroad. Those who want to see a video, there's also a YouTube channel that I haven't seen here. There's an English video, a short explainer video. If you don't want to read, it's all there. If this sparked your interest, dig in, get in touch with me, and I'm looking forward to having a good conversation with you now. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Jörg. Yeah, fascinating ideas. I've certainly got a few questions and comments, but I think there were a couple of comments in the chat, and I think let's go to those first. And then, so I just want to encourage everyone on the call, you're welcome just to respond as we talk in the chat or in the Q&A. So yeah, I mean, we're limited as that we can't actually allow people to speak. The platform it's not allowed at this stage. So let's just jump in and then have the most interactive conversation we can via you posting in the chats, etc. So Mar Gulan, I hope I pronounced your name reasonably well, says your approach to building a PMO is similar to the PMO value ring methodology. Is that a methodology you're familiar with, Jörg? And
yeah, absolutely is. And Americo's work has been very inspiring. He's obviously cited in the white paper we published. And so where is it similar? It is very similar in the concept of the perceived value as being very important for the stakeholders. That's something where the similarity is very pronounced. But the PMO value ring is much more comprehensive. It's very big. So my thought was, I absolutely get this. I've been doing this for more than a decade. But can we have something that's just simplified much more than the PMO value ring? So you can say it's a very, very small subset or a very simplified version of the PMO value ring methodology. So that is where it becomes very different. And another thing would be that the PMO value ring has a cut between the business pains that are collected from the stakeholders and this transition to the PMO services. There are two separate lists that are worked on and translated. And I thought a lot about this. And I put the business pains out of the MVPMO and said, I'm getting this out of this one discussion in one go. I'm listening, and I need to understand the business pains, and then offer a tailored service to this. But I'm not taking this comprehensive intermediate step of documenting them. I'm going straight in and offering the services. So here's another shortcut where the MVPMO is slightly different than what the PMO value ring suggests. But yeah, for those who want more comprehensive approaches, and if they say this is way too simple for me, the PMO value ring would be probably the best starting point. Absolutely. So yeah, thank you for your question, for your comment, Magulan.
Okay, thanks, Jörg. There was a request for the link to the YouTube video, so I just found that and popped that in the comments. So that's, I think, covered. Then Konstantinos says, and he was, as you were speaking, you made a comment about it has possibly a greater opportunity for organizations that are not mature in project management. And he said exactly, perfect for non-mature organizations. And that was a similar thought that came to my mind. Do you typically see, I mean, I guess this hasn't been tested. Is your intuition that it's going to be better for immature? And I was also adding on to that, probably smaller organizations than mega corporates.
Yeah. So I would entirely agree with Konstantinos, what he said. The size tends to matter because for the very large stock listed corporations, they just tend to have mature PM organizations. But when I say it's good for SMEs, I am observing organizations that do not have mature project management organizations up to the size of 10,000 employees.
Wow.
It does happen. It does happen. You have these organizations, they're operationally absolutely excellent. For a century, they're running with a very strong market position, established in conservative industries through their excellence in operations. But that doesn't mean that they're really good at projects. I guess that's a very general thing that we can say. For more than a century, we've been building organizations to optimize their operations, standardize and scale. What we do as project people, that we come in with one-time efforts to change the organization, is somewhat not built into the usual architecture of organizations, with some exceptions. And those who have very strong line function orientation and are process oriented in their operations, they very often have very low maturity in their project execution. So I do see a place for the MVPMO, also for organizations that are somewhat between, let's say, 500 to 5 to 10,000 employees. Everything larger than this, it's becoming increasingly unlikely that it can be usefully applied there. But that's sort of the frame where I think the most value would concentrate. And maybe add to that, it's not only the size, it's also that if you happen to be in a very dynamic business environment where changes are very frequent and your organization needs to adapt very, very quickly, IT comes to mind, or design organizations, agencies, these sort of things, where the markets very quickly change and your business model might be disrupted every 12 months. That is also something where the MVPMO has its value, because the cost of changes of an MVPMO is a lot lower than from the larger, big established structures. Because you have already a process that is proved and practiced for adding new services, taking some out and changing them. So you have smaller iteration cycles, and that results in a smaller cost of changes if you want to have a really agile, fast changing PMO. So I see there another center for high value for this concept.
Thanks, Jörg. There are a few more questions, so I'll just keep running through them. From Enrico, he says, from your experience, have you tried implementing an AI transformation using the MVPO approach? What major challenges have you experienced with it?
What do you mean by AI transformation? Can you elaborate a bit on this?
So Enrique, maybe I'm sorry you can't come in verbally, but just maybe give us a little bit more info, and then we'll try and get to your question in more detail. Then I see Hannes has asked a question: is there a community forum website where the requested participants and contributors can connect and share their findings and insights? I guess, yeah, Jörg?
I don't have a it's a very good idea, Hannes, to set this up, but it's not yet in place. All the conversations that happened now were either in events and presentations like this, or they happened on LinkedIn through the LinkedIn posts and the discussion that followed. Those are pretty much the only places so far.
So if someone was saying, okay, this is great, I want to test this in my company, for example, should they get in touch with you and say,
absolutely,
Jörg, I'm going to run this, and then you will get maybe, hopefully, a number of people testing this methodology, and then you might, from that, pull together a lessons learned feedback. You're looking for this data. So
yeah.
So people should reach out to you and say, I'm going to try it. You would love to hear from them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's the idea. For the beginning, I want to be heavily involved in all the experience that are, so I can gather them and be actively involved in developing the concept. If you want to try this, reach out to me. And to make this live in the beginning, I'm offering introductory services for a fraction of the rate. So this would be a flat fee where any decision maker would say it's a bargain. We're talking like less than half of my fee, maybe a fourth. Very, very cheap. So there's no financial threshold to bring this into the organization. I would fully accompany this. And I want to make this different from the usual PMO implementation offers that are out there that are based on daily rates. I want to make this a fixed fee. So you nail everything down on the result that you're supposed to deliver in the fastest possible way, in acceptable quality. So, short answer to what Mark raised, reach out to me. I do have many more answers to you, including templates behind this and everything. If you want to try this, talk to me.
Perfect. Thanks, Jörg. And then, so Enrico gave some clarity. He said, by the AI implementation, he says, using artificial intelligence as a tool for a corporate team. Do you think that's I mean, I guess you haven't implemented this, so do you think maybe I should rephrase the question to say, is there applicability in introducing other capabilities into an organization using this method? And this would be sort of greater use of artificial intelligence in a corporate team.
I mean, this can be a lot right now. It's Enrico. It's very broad, but while doing this, I tend to use AI as an assistant still, not so much as an agent. And the whole process I've shown, this has been massively supported by AI in any way. And if I go to analyze certain stakeholder feedback afterwards, or if I'm defining services, obviously the non-confidential piece of this, that is all being checked. So AI is all part of everything that is in there, just because it evolved over the last 2 years to be part of every day's work, what we do. I think there are very few people in this call today, and generally in the PM community, who don't use AI in one shape or the other on an almost daily basis. So, but if you want to introduce this to the corporate team, I think this is you're presenting use cases for the team and you have to test them. In that sense, yes, the steps are very similar. Just that you're leaving all the PMO specific stuff out of the 3 steps, but the 3 steps is something you could use analogously. Yeah, I'm not quite sure, Enrico, if I catched your question, if I caught this correctly, but
okay, but that is, thanks, Hugo. I mean, that's kind of how I pictured. I think that for me, the 3 steps as a simple process to testing change or new technology, or what did you call them, services. Certainly one could use that process in other service areas. And if an AI service or an aspect of AI was one of those, you could definitely use a similar approach. There is a couple more questions. So, okay, Enrico said thanks on the button. Thanks, Hugh. So, from Michelle, how long should a team be in the MVPMO state before starting to add services and mature? So that's linked to a question that I had. So I'll maybe tie them. Is the MVPMO really just an initiation approach so that you can get over that risk of value not being created and it's sort of stalling? But ultimately, there is a vision for a sort of more standard approach to establishment of the PMO.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a brilliant question. It's just as you expected, Mark. You can start immediately after the lessons learned of the MVP. You can say, okay, we've done this, and it's obvious to us that this is value, so we want to scale. So everything that has to do with iterate and scale can immediately follow. There's no reason why it shouldn't. And yes, you can have a big vision, but you don't have to.
Yeah, sure.
If you're a managing director who never really thought about projects and was operationally absolutely excellent, and that's how he runs his company, but he thinks that he should transform his company to more a project-driven, at least a bit more project-driven organization, then he can, on the way, learn and figure out what the vision should be through these small iterations. He doesn't have to have the big vision. He can, but he doesn't have to. So the answer to Michelle's question is the time between the finish of the MVPMO and adding new services can be 0. You can immediately continue and iterate and scale and mature.
Okay, super. Thanks, Then I was also intrigued by this, and Ali Azari has raised it. He said, could you tell us more about that KPI that shows us that the MVPMO implementation is right? I think he's referring to that net promoter score and the perceived value. And would you recommend this to someone else? I'm also we do a lot of work and getting useful feedback seems to be such a critical part of many aspects of life. So maybe a bit more information about that.
Absolutely. So the general term perceived value, that's not from me. That's from Americo. That's from the PMO value ring and Americo's work. The net promoter score is also not from me. That is very commonly used in sales and marketing, where you ask the customers once a year in a survey or whatever they use to establish that number, this question: how likely is it on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 100? That's actually the mark that's being used mostly. How likely is it that you're going to recommend us to someone else? And it's very, very simple. And it's 100% subjective of what people answer. But that's exactly the reason why it's such a strong indicator of how strong your market position is. So this is all coming from sales.
Mm.
And this measure of customer satisfaction is being applied here now to your sponsors in the organization. So that's why you're asking this question, how likely is it that you would recommend us to someone else? And if they say no, then you have a problem. And if they say, yes, it's very likely, it's a 9 out of 10, then you can be sure that, yeah, it wasn't too wrong how you started. And it gives you, and it simplifies a very, very complicated discussion. Like if you look at the literature of KPIs for PMOs, this can be infinitely complicated.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to measure the value of good organizational structures who are driving change. It's so hard to monetize and quantify.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's such an elegant way around this to, I can say this because it's not my idea, to use a subjective measure. And Net Promoter Score is a very, very established KPI.
Thanks, you got so I think that's something I'm certainly going to look into with my team. Is this because we've also had that question of how do we measure the impact of our PMO, and even that is not always that simple. So, for example, you do a whole lot of training. So, training, maybe more people are certified, but you don't really do this so people can get certified. You upskill people so that projects can be delivered. So then you're saying, okay, well, how do you judge the effect of your project delivery? And so okay, we spend more money or more projects are successful, but even success in projects is quite complex to really measure. So I had one question that I'm keen to ask. And we've got 5 minutes, so let me jump into that. Does it most of the time, and I think you kind of hinted at that, really require an external specialist to come into a company to run this process? I would guess that's the case. If that is the case, then you're having to deal with that person or have possibly no understanding of the company culture, the company values. They've got no social capital with anyone in the business. It's quite a thing for someone to come in and implement change just out of with no context. Is your expectation generally that this would be a consultant that would come in and run the MVPMO in a business?
When we talk about very immature companies who are trying to build this, I think this is the fastest and most cost-effective way to have someone with the experience to do this well come in. Now, there are alternative ways to this. If you say like, yeah, we do have some expertise and we want to build this, let's go full in and let's hire someone who is very experienced to do this. But implementing the concept, if you have very little PMO experience, exposes you to all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
It might take longer, it might create a lot of frustration and burn the whole topic, PMO excellence or PM excellence in your organization for a very long time. So yes, during the discussions, we generally arrive at the point where it's not the only way to have an external consultant, but in most cases, it will likely be the recommended and best way and the ones that has the most favorable risk profile for the organization.
Okay, super. And then let's close with this question, because it is coming up for 6 o'clock. Al Aglia, I might have pronounced that incorrectly, said, you mentioned about organization size, but more specifically, how many running projects could the MVPMO cover? So that's it. For me, that's interesting because that speaks to almost project support, getting involved in actually running projects, which are, if I understand the question, which is unlikely to be really doable in that short period of time.
It's a very good question, Aglaya. It's very good. And it depends. The answer is it depends very much on the service you're offering. There are certain services that don't depend, that have no interaction whether you're running 10 or 1,000 projects in your organization. It does matter substantially if you try to offer a project list. Then it obviously does. But if you're offering just a general risk register or a project charter, well, the charter is maybe not the best example, but the risk register, without having to carry this into every single project, then it doesn't matter so much. So assuming that you're offering a service that doesn't have to be uniformly applied across every project immediately, that gives you some sort of flexibility, because you can say, I'm offering the risk register, here it is. I'm keeping a central repository of the largest lists in the risks in the organization. And if you want to use this in your project, here's the process, how the PMO supports you in doing this. Step 1, you trigger this, that you want this, you approach me. I give you the document, train you in 30 minutes. We make the first entries and I moderate the discussion. You come back after 5 days with everything you added in. We review this, done. And then you should be able to walk alone. This is something, a service that you can offer as a PMO for everyone who wants it without having to cover the 100 projects all at once. So it depends very much on your service design, how large you can go and how many projects you can have in the organization with the MVPMO approach. But the idea behind this is still that the PMO is not a top-down control function, but it's more a service function that is putting out services that are delivering value. And you're only adopting those that have high value. And those who have low value, they tend to get requested less. So does that answer your question, how you're dealing with increasing complexity and number of projects in this concept? Or have I missed your question, Aglaya?
We'll just have to wait and see if the comment comes through. But yeah, there we go. Perfect.
There is a yes. Okay, good. Glad.
Okay, well, maybe we must bring this to a close. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Jörg, thank you again. It was really great. I think we could also see from the level of interactions in the questions that there was a lot of interest. And thank you for everyone that attended. Thanks for your questions and for being part of the conversation. As Jörg said, he would love to connect with you. So please reach out, especially if you plan to give this a test. I think I know actually one of my team members was on the call. So I think this model is something that we must think about and see if we can use it. We can't establish another PMO, but I think the model is really interesting in terms of establishing and introducing new services. So maybe we can use it in a slightly different way. And I'll chat. That was Michelle, who's part of my team. So part of our team at the city and also actually a member of this special interest group as well. Also, please do register on the SIG website if you'd like to join. You now have got a feeling of what this is about. And yeah, so that's it. Thanks all. And hope to see you on the next webinar. Cheers.